You are in the Energy and Environment Committee. Today is September 2nd, room 1010, and we have a quorum, Madam Clerk. So let us go ahead and, if it's okay with this body, take item number 1 on consent. There are cards on it, so we'll go ahead and read those. Mr. Prieto?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Item number 1, Department of Water and Power report relative to proposed amendments, number 1, 2, and 3.
Very good. We've got Herman and Wayne going once, going twice.
I was trying to fix his phone.
Please start his time.
No problem, Chippy. Now, in regards to item number 1, it's talking about the Power Commissioners and City Administrative Officers reports. But I'm very surprised that there was an impact statement report. It says yes, but however, there was no community impact statement, none submitted. Over and over, there's usually not any statement from the community, and I find that very, excuse me, see, I didn't get a chance to turn off my phone because you rushed me. Hold on, I'm in a meeting, I have to call you back. So on that point, down to my last 20 seconds, is that you need to have more transparency when it comes to these items on the agenda, and allowing most of these speakers here who are probably campaign donors or people of interest in city business, allowing them more time would be more appropriate than wasting their time here as you started this committee basically 8 minutes late.
Wayne. All right, we're done with that one. Colleagues, we're going to go ahead and approve the proposed amendments to the ANPP Hasayampa Switchyard interconnection agreement between Mesquite Power and the DWP and the remaining co-owners of the ANPP.
No objection.
No objection. That shall be the order. We'll go ahead and take item number 4 now, colleagues. It is a closed session item. For all of those who are here on either items, we apologize, but we need to, as time restraints, hear this one out of order. So with that, Sergeants, I'm going to ask that you clear the room. We will keep...
Yes, sir, you can start now.
Conveying a message.
If I do that, I'd rather give one. These are for everybody. Thank you for delivering the message. Very good. So on items number 4, we are back in open session. We have 2 speaker cards on item number 4, Herman and Wayne.
Oh. Public comment. Oh, okay.
Wayne, please start his clock.
Okay. Hello, Chipmunk. Anyway. Oh, good. You're getting sued. Yay. Pending litigation. It forbids the Department of Water and Power's annual transfer of money. Yes! Yes, it's true. Yes. You got to stop stealing money from my rates. I go home and I turn on the faucet, and once it gets past a certain amount of time, it says, "Warning, the following will be now paid to the General Council's General Fund." So we have to stop this. Please, no more transfer of money from the DWP to your corrupt organization of crime and criminality. Thank you.
Great. Champion, Eisen, Eck, all related to the case, and they involve fraud, abuse, and corruption. Such scandalous good payoffs for the city of Los Angeles. Just throwing millions of dollars away for settlements once again. Proposition 26, codified under Article 13C, Section 1E, parentheses, the California Constitution forbids the City of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power for annual transfers of monies, MOU. Make you understand that you can't take the Power Revenue Fund to unfortunately misused by your corruption. White-collar crime does not pay, Mr. Chipmunk Fuentes. White-collar crime doesn't pay. The City General Fund, white crime doesn't pay. Eventually, FBI will investigate.
So we are now going to go ahead and on item 4, as I mentioned before, we will go ahead and there is no action. The matter was informational purposes only. Mr. Prieto, let's take items 2 and 3 together in as much as they are related in their issues, and the Bureau of Sanitation has prepared a report for both.
Yes, certainly, Mr. Chair. Item number 2 relates to motion City of Buscano et al. Relative to the Bureau of Sanitation report on service request backlog for pickup of abandoned waste and legally dumped bulky items. Number 3, motion as well, Huizar Harris Dawson et al. Relative to the Bureau of Sanitation report on its customer care system and related matters. You have staff from Bureau of
Very good.
Sanitation.
Mr. Saldivar.
Oh, Mr. Chair, the clerk wanted me to indicate that on number 2, the matters have been referred to Public Works Committee, Public Works and Gain Reduction Committee as well, too.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair Fuentes, honorable members of the committee. I'm Enrique Zaldivar. I'm the Director and General Manager of LA Sanitation. Thank you for the opportunity to elaborate on the programs in LA Sanitation, the interrelationship of the various services in our solid resources program, the business intricacies of the Bureau's services related to illegal dumping, and the data analysis report featured in both the LA Times and Daily News articles on Saturday, August 15, 2015. Before I go any further, I want you to know that I fully understand that any inequity in services provided by the city, whether it is real or perceived, is unacceptable. It is unacceptable to Mayor Garcetti, to the City Council, to this committee, to the Board of Public Works, and to LA Sanitation. Ultimately, it is unacceptable to the residents of the city. In our efforts to bridge a gap in illegal dumping services, and in our effort to undertake a rollout of the new CSI program, we have had some shortcomings in data management and technology applications. Those efforts have provided us with important lessons learned moving forward. LA Sanitation has 3 major core programs in support of our mission to protect public health and the environment. The Clean Water, Watershed Protection, and Solid Resources programs. The illegal dumping service that is in question is part of the Solid Resources program. LA San is an agency of nearly 3,000 employees and over $1.1 billion in revenue, with a proud diversity of talented staff in multiple fields and professions. We are truck operators, chemists, engineers, equipment operators, wastewater operators, many other professions. Early on in his administration, Mayor Garcetti asked how I would best describe the work culture of my agency. I said, an LA San employee is one who is guided by a simple creed. Yes, I can. Yes, I will make a positive difference. I believe that each of you would attest to my characterization of sanitation's work culture. Whether it's through our daily core services, the work we've done in the single-use plastic bag ban ordinance, the revitalization of the LA River, the green stormwater infrastructure policies, the restoration of Echo Park, Lake, the Keep It Clean campaign, homeless and cabin cleanups citywide, et cetera, et cetera. I say all of this because the backdrop of LA San's work ethic and commitment to service is fully relevant as I discuss the data analysis done in both articles. The data used in the news articles covered the time period from 2010 through June 30th, 2015. That's roughly 5 years. A total of 153,330 service requests received by LA San, of which 111,878 were responded to or closed, and 41,452 were left open or unserviced. Or looking at it in a slightly different way, one could say it was a 73% closure rate with a 27% open percentage rate. And that it was done so in a geographical pattern that appears to inequitably disfavor the South LA and North Central parts of Los Angeles. I will break down the 5-year period that we're talking about into 3 phases, as each has a distinct set of circumstances. I'll start with the 2010-2013 time period. This is a time characterized by it being the worst of the Great Recession, in which we, the city as a whole, experienced severe budget cutbacks, staff reductions and layoffs, and correspondingly a significant reduction in services. The illegal dumping program resided in the Bureau of Street Services in this time period. It was cut back every year and completely defunded in 2012. These were very difficult years for everybody. We in LA San experienced a staff reduction of over 250 employees. In the midst of it all, we also assisted by bringing into our fold half of the employees in what was then the Department of Environmental Affairs. We brought other programs and staff into sanitation during those years. The illegal dumping program had a huge gap in service, and ultimately in 2012 provided no service at all. Residents, council offices, and others were calling us for help, and we did, to the best of our abilities, given our own limited resources. Again, this was a time of no resources, little service, and poor record keeping for the illegal dumping program. There are a number of possible reasons for why requests were left open in the data. The request was referred for a field check. The field check was done, but no follow-through was entered into the system. The field check never happened. The request was completed, but never closed in the system. Or we were honestly unable to respond to the request. The most probable scenario for why the open requests show as they do in the geographical pattern is the propensity of requests for illegal dumping being beyond our capabilities would have been higher in those parts of the city, meaning these were the very large types of requests for which we would not have been able to, even in our best attempt, been able to respond to. We cannot fully reconstruct the reason why the pattern of disparity of fulfillment shows as it does over the 5-year period. I can assure you, however, that our system of deployment, or for deployment of bulky item services, is based only on one criteria: the next collection day, and only that. I will show you in my subsequent PowerPoint presentation the crux of this deployment logic. The tide began to turn in fiscal year 13-14 with the attention that Councilmember Cedillo and Councilmember Price brought to this issue in their respective districts. And with the leadership of Mayor Garcetti and the full City Council, a citywide strategy was put in place starting in 14-15 with $5 million budget appropriation for the illegal dumping program, further augmented to $8.985 million in this fiscal year, following the release of Mayor Garcetti's Clean Streets Initiative, Executive Director number 8, which provides a broader, more comprehensive approach to livability and cleanliness in all of the neighborhoods of the city. Fiscal year 13-14, a transition year. Coming into office on July 1st, 2013, Councilmember Cedillo made it his top priority to address the blight caused by the accumulation of illegally dumped waste in many parts of his district. Councilmember Cedillo knew that LA San did not have the official responsibility for illegal dumping, But he could tell that we wanted to get off the sidelines on this issue and be brought into the game, so to speak, to make a real difference in the outcome. Councilmember Cedillo partnered with LA Sam for a district-wide cleanup pilot program known as the Keep It Clean campaign, where we virtually swept the entire district of all illegally dumped locations. Some large, some small, some very, very large. In all, 1,400 tons were collected, which is about 350 truckloads. Similarly, Councilmember Price made this issue his top priority in his district, and we partnered with him. Roughly 900 tons of residual waste were collected. And by the way, none of this work was entered, nor was it reconciled with the data set used in both LA Times and Daily News. We didn't reconcile, we didn't go back and said, well, perhaps doing ourselves a disservice and not being able to account for existing pre-existing open requests. This pilot work gave us the opportunity to learn the intricacies of the work involved and the related issues, and to be able to more realistically assess the breadth of the challenge and how we would need to organize and tackle the issue citywide, including the need for more specific data metrics. It also provided the necessary groundwork for Mayor Garcetti and your City Council to address this issue citywide, as you did in the immediate following fiscal year. Thank you, Councilmember Cedillo, for the opportunity. Fiscal year 14-15 and beyond. This fiscal year marks the beginning of the real turnaround story, addressing the complexities of illegal dumping and a more comprehensive approach with funding to support it. LA Sand had presented a rough annual budget estimate of $25 million as the amount needed for the illegal dumping program. But we realized that the city remained in a financial recovery, and we simply wanted to present what we thought would be the best estimate to fully address it back then. Mayor Garcetti and your City Council appropriated $5 million in 14-15 to LA Sand for 2 strike teams to physically collect illegally dumped waste throughout the city, and thus officially placing the responsibility for illegal dumping within sanitation, or with sanitation. Relatedly, in fiscal year 14-15, Mayor Garcetti and the City Council also appropriated $1.85 million to LA Sand for cleanups in Skid Row specifically, and $500,000 for cleanups in Venice. In April 2015, Mayor Garcetti signed Executive Directive number 8, known as the Clean Streets Initiative, CSI, laying out a strategy on the broader community value of livability in our neighborhoods, and tasking LA Sand, the Board of Public Works Commission, and others with specific goals to ultimately achieve cleanliness across the city. ED8 was the precursor that led to an increase in the CSI budget in fiscal year 15-16 from $5 million to $8.985 million. I will address the more specific milestones and events in 14-15, including the technology challenges, in my PowerPoint presentation. Earlier this month, Mayor Garcetti tasked 2 teams within his office, a technology team and an operations team, to independently review and assist LA Sand in ensuring that all of our business practices lead to an equitable deployment of services. I spoke earlier about our work culture in sanitation. The yes I can, yes I will make a positive difference work culture. We fully recognize that with the advent of data-driven decision-making, performance-based budgeting, and open data accessibility and transparency, this model will now be, yes I can, yes I will, make a positive difference, and make a record of it. You know, If you were to ask any one of our employees involved in the CSI program, be it our foot soldiers in the ground, the bulky item battalion truck operators, our community services group, who work directly and in concert with your district offices, our watershed protection environmental inspector corps, our field supervisors and superintendents, our customer care agents, and those from the engineering, information technology, public education, and governmental affairs professions, our managers, our executives, and myself. Why do we want to get ourselves in this business of illegal dumping and homeless encampment cleanup since it is such a difficult issue? The answer is simple. It is because we see this as part and parcel of our mission to protect public health and the environment. It is because we respond when our city leaders, Mayor Garcetti, this committee, the City Council, and the Board of Public Works call on us. And it is because we see this as a moral obligation to all of our city residents. We are committed. I will now go over the more mundane part of my presentation, heavy on numbers, graphs, and charts. Marcy? You have paper copies there with you as well. And Mr. Chair, I will, I will follow your cue on with regards to time.
All day.
Okay, thank you. Very good. So I'll start with the data analysis plotted on the graph. This is a 5-year period that was covered both in the LA Times and the Daily News. What you see in blue is each graph represents the total request in each of your council districts. And what you see in blue is those requests that were recorded as completed and filled. What you see in orange are those that were left open. Now, you see, for example, CD9 would have had the largest number of requests, the highest percentage of the highest number of completion, but also a significant number of open requests. CD1, proportionally, a number of open to completed about 50-50%. And then you see some that show as completed, 100%. I spoke earlier of the most probable scenario for why that pattern shows as it does. And remember, most of this time was when we were triaging, when we were just responding the best we could. But what would have most probably have happened is that when our driver came to a location that came in as a request, and our driver saw that that request was well beyond our capabilities, meaning a lot more than a single person can pick up as a bulky item, that request would have seen its end, meaning it would not have been completed because there was no place to refer it. There was no other follow-up that could be done. So that's why those districts would show a higher propensity, a higher rate of open requests. Let me go.
Before you move on to, just for, I'm wondering out loud, where are your city yards in relation to these council districts? Is proximity potentially another reason why it was that some of these areas weren't serviced?
Travel time always plays into it, but it will not have been a significant.
Because when I look at CD 6, 7, and 2, I know you've got East Valley Yard, and those seem to be doing okay. In fact, there are very few open cases. I just wonder when you look at 13, which looks to be the worst in terms of open cases, then followed by 9 and 10 and 1 and 14, where are their yards in relation to that?
Yes, and in fact, I do have a graph, I should say a map that shows
Okay,
where
hold it till then.
yes. Marcy? I spoke so proudly of our partnership with Councilmember Cedillo. This is a quick depiction on the metrics that we got from the pilot. 1,400 tons, 350 truckloads, 228 service days in total. Next. Next slide, Marcy. I know this is a bit of a busy graph. I want to cover the 14-15 milestones. I think it's important that I quickly cover that in terms of how things evolved in 14-15, things of significance. Starting with the $5 million that were appropriated, it took 3 months. By October 30th, we had the full appropriation in our hands, meaning with sanitation. Very quickly, a week after, we were moving with what was the beginning of our technology adaptation with a system called Sandstar, whose merits are incredibly important because it's a lot of data that we're moving, it's a lot of follow-up, a lot of requests, a lot of metrics that need to be captured. This is a computer system that will do that. 11/17 was our official launch of CSI under the new funding of $5 million. We come to February 13th of this year, February 13th, 15th. You'll see I have here listed, and I'll just read it to you right now because I'll come back to this very important piece here. I call it a new dispatch logic revised. Essentially, all bulky items requests, regardless of whether it's illegal dumping, whether it's a regular bulky item, were grouped into the same deployment logic. And you'll see how that makes a huge, important relevance a little later. We began testing for the new MyLA 311 that is in the works of being rolled out. We began testing for that in May of this year. We did a soft launch of MyLA 311. This is a behind-the-scenes launch that has already occurred on August 5th. The development of the interface between our Sandstar, our field dispatch computer system, and MyLA 311 is in the works, has not been completed. And on August 14th, which is 2 weeks ago, we bypassed the Sandstar so that we're able to complete this interface without any interruptions, if you will. I liken it to having a pipe break, and while you fix the pipe break, you set up a bypass so you can repair and complete the bypass. So you can repair and put in the new pipe. So those are key milestones and what I'm going to cover in the next slides. The next slide is the map you were talking about, Mr. Chair. This is our subdivision of our logistical work in our yards. Although I don't show exactly the location of each, but these are the waysheds and how each yard is located within each of these waysheds, Mr. Chair. So the East Valley would be on the far right. With regards to proximity to the council districts and what have you, this map doesn't quite show an overlay of the council districts. But because the valley does have huge travel distances, far more than all the other districts, could that have been a factor or not? Or we didn't think it would have played too much into the open request. Now, in this map, I'm sorry, Marcy, within it, in very small letters, you see a further subdivision, which is the 5 collection days in each collection district or in each wayshed. That's a crucial piece of information. 5 collection days within each council district, within each wayshed. Then we come into what is essentially the brain of our deployment logic. Something I call our mass balance diagram. Mass balance, in scientific terms, whether it's an engineering background or any other, it refers to a state of equilibrium. So much comes in, so much goes out. There's an equilibrium. So what this diagram represents is how many requests come in each day into our customer care center and 311 for our services of bulky item. What you see is that we have an average of 1,900 total service requests. 1,900 every single day. And they get deployed and assigned to each collection day under one service promise. And that service promise is that it will be serviced by the next collection day. So as it comes in, today is Wednesday. So a call is coming in right now and say my collection day is Friday. It gets placed on Friday. By Thursday night, the bucket for Friday will be what it is, roughly about 1,900, and that many will be serviced on Friday. So the only criteria by which all of these requests in the 3 categories are assigned is by the next collection day. That's it. Nothing else. Now, in the total way of looking at this mass balance, we do a number of other logistical decisions. Is this a recyclable bulky item or is it a disposable bulky item? And then we go further because is it e-waste, which is recyclable but regulated? Is it a recyclable metal value, which is like a range, is a refrigerator? All those go in different trucks. We do not burden our customers or the callers, whomever's calling, with a detailed inventory of, we do not ask them, can you go back and see what really is there? We take a general description. Sometimes it's specific, sometimes it's not, but we don't overburden.
But you sort on the public right-of-way then, so you're not collecting everything, centralizing it, and then deciding which bin to put all those different types of waste in. You're deploying specific trucks to deal with the specific deal that's on the right-of-way.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be better to pick everything up, take it to a central yard, and then distinguish which goes into the e-waste bucket, which is disposable, which one's recyclable? Wouldn't that be a better way of doing it?
Well, for one, and I'm not by all giving you a full analysis right now, but we would need a huge processing center. Imagine 2,000 requests a day. I was trying to think of the total tons per day that would need to be processed.
Yeah. No, when I say centralize it, you've got how many yards in the city of Los Angeles?
6.
And so I'm just assuming that you pick things up for that day, for that collection day, you take it to that yard, and then you figure out at that yard where to put the different things that you just collected, instead of having to be dependent upon a fleet of vehicles making its way to the same location for the TV, the sofa, and the recyclable item.
Yeah.
Right, because right now, potentially, if you've got that many different items on the street, you're going to need that many trucks to service that spot.
So, and because the characteristics of each type, for example, the e-waste computers, we don't want to crush the glass because that is precisely what contains the mercury and the other things. If it's anything liquid, we do find hazardous waste. We find all kind, used motor oil, engine coolant, you name it. Certain items are compacted, Mr. Chair. The things that are disposable, those are compacted. That allows us to carry more in a truck. So instead of carrying half a ton, we carry 4 or 5 tons. So there's all of this other operational, but I think your point is could all of that be centralized in a way in which the sorting happens at that location? Could we do it at the district yards? The answer to that is no, we cannot do it at the district yards. We're not permitted as a transfer station. In some of these, but could we do it at another location, perhaps? That's which
Well, I'm just wondering why so when I experience illegal dumping, I've got a bunch of different things on the street. And so when we go and volunteer, we pick everything up, put it, albeit I can't compact it, so I have to do more trips, but we put everything on a flatbed and then we take it away. Here, presumably, you can have 3 different types of vehicles to come into a location, pick up the green waste, pick up the television, pick up the compactable waste. I mean, you're having a small fleet arrive to a location depending on what it is that's on the street. I mean, that's what the practice is today.
Yes.
Okay.
But please allow us to do a deeper analysis on you, because I will tell you that by state law now, mattresses will now be regulated, and they have to be collected. They cannot be disposed of anymore, so they have become a recyclable, regulated commodity.
Suspended product liability.
Yes, and that has made us think about that very model, as you were, it's okay, because that has added one more layer of complication to our collection. So this is the crux of our deployment logic. 14-15, things are already looking better. With regards to, the orange has gone much smaller, meaning open requests. We now, by 14-15, July 2015, we were at a 13% open rate, way down from the 27% that we had started with in the earlier time period.
Does this analysis include what was reported in the daily papers?
Yes.
Or these are just solely your numbers?
No, up until June 30th, these numbers are inclusive of it.
Okay.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, we're using the exact same measurements?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, open
So this
versus
is
closed.
the standalone for the last year, based on the same measurements for the whole 5 years?
Yes,
Thank you.
open and closed, yes. Now, this here shows the tonnage, and I want to sort of make a highlight here of how we distinguish the 2 strike teams that collect the heavy stuff versus the bulky item folks who collect the lighter stuff, the single item or 2 items. This tonnage here I'm showing you is the tonnage that comes from the strike teams that collect the heavy, more complex type of stuff. So you see how the tonnage looks like by council district and the distribution of it. CD1 and CD9, CD8. Not far behind there is CD7, and so on. A very different distribution than the first picture of the 5-year analysis. This here just shows the tonnage that we collect each month for purposes of of relativity, just so that you get a sense of how much tonnage is coming overall each month from these very critical strike teams.
This is only for the strike teams?
Yes.
So this is about 8 personnel, thereabouts, right? There's only
Each
two-
one,
there's two-
yeah.
So
9 in
16
each.
total.
Yes.
This is the work of 16 people, okay.
All right, so a more recent picture here. July 2015 by itself, how we're looking. That orange tip is ever smaller. This is just last month, July, still a little bit of orange, but far less. So I'm depicting the progress that we have made just in this 14-15. And then here comes the graph. Try to make it simpler, but I will describe each aspect of it. I wanted to make sure that I was able to show to you what this represents and things that we have already been able to do. On the top is what had been the backlog that would have been attributable to 14-15. 14-15, we began with a total of just under 6,000 open requests. We were eating away at it very slowly. In August, we were trying to, bring it down, just did a little bit. We realized this is going to take way too long.
So these are tons on the left-hand side? Or what is that?
Number of requests.
Number of requests, and the numbers below are in tons or requests?
Where it says it's open and closed requests. So it is all requests,
All requests.
Mr. Chair. This is all requests. So we started the backlog that would have been attributable to 14-15 coming into August was just under 6,000. So that's 5,987 there and the tiny numbers down below. And the progress we try to make to bring it down, it was taking too long. We realized that there's just no way that we can go one day at a time. It'll take us, 4 more months, if that. So we made a decision to deploy a battalion of bulky item drivers on one Saturday the 22nd, and clear this backlog for good. The 14-15 backlog. So as we sit here today, the backlog from 14-15, all the orange tips that you would have seen in 14-15 in the previous graphs is gone. That has been cleared. Now, the graphs below show every day of the month of August. Relative of all the service requests, we're still talking service requests here, Mr. Chair, in that same very graph. This graph here. Each bar represents the mass balance for each of the days this month. And what it shows is that we have been at mass balance this whole month of August. We have achieved mass balance, meaning all requests coming in are being serviced on the service promise of next collection day, with the inherent tips at the very top that represent what we call the inherent incompletes. That means that there's a stop in which we were not able to access the road. There's either fire or police activity. There's parking that does not allow a truck to enter the street. So that is listed as an incomplete for the day, but it's followed the next day. and completed. So this shows the next collection day service promise. And then we have this other tip here that shows a CSI referral, which means is that on the same visit by the driver, comes to a stop and sees, oh boy, this is not just that couch that was listed on the service request. It's actually a big pile of many things beyond the capabilities of the driver. So that gets referred to our CSI strike teams for the heavy lifting. So those are the referrals that are occurring. Outside of that, it's mass balance. That's on data, graphs, and charts. I spoke earlier of the Sandstar and my LA311 interface. That is in the works. We believe that we can have that completed by the end of November and be able to have Sandstar fully pay the dividends that we know it can and that it will. Because in this bypass that we have put in right now, we're doing some automation of data and mapping and deployment, but it's not to the full potential of Sandstar. But we're working with the mayor's office, we're working with ITA and our entire technology team in sanitation, along with the folks who are on the consultant side for my LA311, as well as on our consultant side from ISRI, a company in Redlands, to make that happen. Moving forward, just one-liners on the important aspects of the moving forward picture. Complete the interface of my LA311 and Sandstar. Stick to and sustain our service promise of next collection day. Service check, meaning do a field check of all open service requests that are carryovers from the earlier year, 2010 to 2014. Of course, we want to, from now on, document every service point. We were talking earlier with Councilmember Bloomfield and Councilmember O'Farrell, all of the community cleanups that go on as they should with the engagement of the community. And we wouldn't think twice about whether we need to record everything. But we do now. And it's important that we do, without it becoming overbearing. So we're saying let's record. Which has now become our new motto: get it off the ground and record it. There's accountability, increased accountability that needs to happen within sanitation. We have a customer care center whose job is going to be clearly that they look after all of the customer service requests and that they be completed, and that we communicate back with the customer, regardless on the status if things are not happening like they're supposed to. And we want to be prepared for the strike teams seeing an increase, what we anticipate, an increase in workload with the full rollout of my LA311. On your earlier point, Mr. Chair, with regards to could there be other service models that we can analyze, explore, maybe even test, and why not implement? When was the last time we did a spring cleanup campaign throughout the city. So we're saying maybe we need to do more of those on a citywide basis, on a more, systematic basis, as opposed to just at the community level. So that's one. The other is other service model options that we may explore. This is a focused picture just on the backlogs. I know I've talked quite a bit about the different backlogs. There was a backlog of just 2014 and 15, which I told you has been eradicated, has been eliminated. But I wanted to show how the breakdown of the backlog looks like. And you see it on the far right, how by each council district, how much of it came from which council district. So that's the graph on the far right. And then there's the backlog, the carryover backlog, as we have come to call it, from the earlier years, the January 1st, 2010 to June 30th, 2014. There's a total number of 29,246, roughly 30,000, that still show us open in our data. Now, what we propose to do and what we are going to do, because our hypothesis had been that these locations over the years, in one form or another, would have been captured and collected via all the efforts that have happened, including, I gave the example of the work we did in CD1 with Councilmember Cedillo. That was a district-wide effort. One would presume that all of the open requests that existed up until that time would have been captured by the service that was provided in the campaign. And yet, we didn't reconcile, so they still show us open. So what we plan to do for that number of open requests, so that there's no doubt, we plan to utilize a group of our drivers who have a temporary restriction due to an injury, so they're on light duty, where we can have them, they cannot drive, they cannot perform their normal duties, but they cannot drive the heavy truck, but they can drive a smaller truck. Have them go to each of these locations, because we have them on our data, and do a field check. And note it. If there's nothing there, we close it. If something is there, it'll be then added for service. So we plan to do that by the end of November.
You plan on beginning by the end of November, or having gone through the 30,000 by the end of November?
Having gone through them by the end of November. Now, this table here shows the strike teams and the important, great work they're doing in all of your districts. You will see in one of my recommendations is that that sanitation be given position authority and the funding to be able to staff a third strike team. You see on this table the backlog of the two categories that are applicable for the strike teams, either a homeless encampment cleanup or a illegal dumping debris cleanup. These strike teams do both. And you'll see here that there's a backlog that's grown in significance. Now, it's difficult for us right now to assess what might this represent in time. In other words, when can we bring this down if we do X or Y? Some of these are very complex in terms of all of the work that's involved on the education, the protocols, and the various kinds of ways that are found in those cleanups. But it's important, however, that we do not allow this backlog to build up any more than it already is.
So on this page here, because it's hard for me to believe that in Council District 7, in your backlog, there's only 3 homeless encampments that were referenced and 3 illegal dumping debris cleanup sites. This is the backlog, the 5-year sum total, less what you've accomplished through August, right? This is the 10 through 14 years.
No, Mr. Chair, these are only for our strike teams, the ones that are doing the heavy lifting that also do the homeless encampments.
Okay, so it's not including the backlog from 2010?
None of this is in that data set.
Okay.
This is just the heavy lifting, more complicated, more complex service requests.
And these are the ones that are being requested by council offices because they're the CSI strike team ones?
Yes.
Okay. So I need to get back and yell at my staff for having only reported 3 homeless encampments and 3 illegal dumping debris.
But you know, Mr. Chair, that one of those requests is probably 3 weeks worth.
$200,000 is the one.
3 weeks worth.
Right. But I passed 3 on the way to the Metrolink station this morning. And so I have to assume that we're not doing a good job reporting these to you based on this chart.
I wouldn't say that about your staff.
Well,
I wouldn't.
Mr. Blumenthal,
because you know how much I love
is doing far worse than I am because his staff has only reported 1 homeless encampment for CSI and 0 illegal dumping. I mean, this chart sort of really blows my mind here in terms of how effective the CSI program is or isn't. It doesn't tell me very much because I'm fairly certain that we have called in more than 3 sites. But I guess as we dig deeper here, I'll have a better sense as to how.
But it illustrates the very point I'm trying to make, Mr. Chair, that this is what we have on our books, what really is out there.
Is a whole different ball of wax.
Which is why I am making the case for that 3rd strike team. Because
Sure, so
if you were to report, say you send 1 or 2 of your deputies, or we go out and do a reconnaissance, and now we find 100, I shouldn't say 100, say 20. Well, suddenly the backlog has grown, just because we have not reflected them. That's precisely my point.
So these are just your eyes, sanitation's eyes and ears verify and report. So
or referrals, yes.
Right. But I mean, if we've got 10 calls in and they've only made their way to 3 of these so far, that's all this is going to reflect.
Yes.
Okay. And your request, I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned it because I want to talk about it at some point, but to add an additional strike team, you're talking about how many bodies? 6?
Yeah, we scaled it down so that it's less, 6.
Yeah. I don't know that it's going to make a huge difference, 6 more bodies, given sort of what this information is. I think that there's a deeper dive that we're going to have to do on how it is that we fund all of this stuff, which I think you did it was very helpful for me in the report that you gave in terms of the different buckets of dollars for multifamily, residential, bulky, the franchise, watershed. I mean, to me, I think that's where the solution is. I don't know that another team today is going to make a significant difference given this information here. But let's keep going. I want to make sure that I'm cognizant of my committee members' times. I know that they may have things, but this is all I live for right now. So let's keep going here. So you've got the CSI initiative. We're pretty familiar with that. Yep. Let's get to your recommendations.
Very good. Number 1, in as much as I've made my commitment to you and the mayor that we will maintain a daily mass balance, I'm recommending that you instruct me, and as I know the mayor has already instructed me to maintain a daily mass balance. That's number 1.
And so you're already doing that, so
yes.
We can check that off the list. And the mass balance approach is new?
Yes.
As of?
February.
So prior to this, the approach was?
We were doing separate field checks for illegal dumping.
All right.
What does that mean, separate field checks for illegal dumping?
Yes, so we, instead of having all of the bulky item requests that were coming in, we would segregate the ones that had illegal dumping associated with them and send those for a field check. and that was taking too long. It was overwhelming our staff. So the heck with that. Let's just put them into the deployment logic of all the other bulky items. Now the driver goes, and it's only the bulky item. It's completed.
But before the fuel check, why that approach? Was it intended to figure out which bucket of funding to then address the subsequent cleanup? Is that why we would do a fuel check?
There was a time in which requests that were for illegally dumped bulky items turned out to be far more than just a bulky item. And things began to change, and the probability changed. It became where, in fact, they were becoming more and more just bulky items. So we flipped. Rather than have it be a fuel check by default, now we do a service by default.
So the fuel check was something that was done by sanitation and, to be fair, street services? Was that the practice?
Oh, that was way back then, but I'm talking even as recently as 14, 15, we were still doing field checks.
To see what was out there and then decide how to pick it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Cut that step out, go straight out to
Yeah, just go.
the location, pick it up, or if it's something that you can't handle, note it at that point.
Then it.
And then
so
90%
we flipped
of
it.
them you're going to pick up anyway,
Flipped it.
so that makes sense.
And then check afterwards to see if it's been picked up?
Yeah.
Well, so I mean that was a huge change in logic. Okay. Instruct us to complete the interface between Sandstar and my LA 311. That you asked that we present to, as part of the budget process, a package for a performance metrics review group within sanitation. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of analytics, a lot of diagnostics that need to be done. It's an incredible resource. It's one thing capturing the data, but ensuring that you diagnose and that you are able to learn from the data. We've done our best to try to piecemeal folks who can look at this in a focused way. We clearly don't have the resources to be able to do it in the way that, say, LAPD does with CompStat. And we have an incredible large amount of data in sanitation. And then I get into the more specific budgetary types of recommendations. I'm asking that you transfer $750,000 from the unappropriated balance to sanitation to be able to deploy the third strike team. And number six, I'm asking that you authorize these position authorities specific for that third strike team. I will say that in talking with your staff, both Mr. Chair and your staff, Jenny and Christine and the CAO, perhaps there was a misunderstanding of what was already authorized by council as to what authority I have. Our understanding was that you had not given me authority to be able to spend salary money for this third strike team, nor the position authorities to go with it. The CAO and perhaps may have an understanding that I already have authority. The one thing we are not going to do, and as committed as we are to always doing the service, is that we do something that is fiscally irresponsible. So if I believe that I don't have the authority to spend money, that you have not given me the appropriation authority, you or the mayor, I'm not going to do that. So that's why I'm asking for this specific authority. Similarly, to have $750,000 of the unappropriated balance be placed in the Board of Public Works budget. for the community organizations to help us with the backlog through the Clean Streets Initiative and other services that are associated with it. Number 8 is something that you probably say, well, what is this all about? You would recall from when you approved our budgets that there's a salary savings rate that's always built into the funding level that you give each department. So for this particular program, Solid Resources Program, I thought the salary savings rate was 3%, so I would be, and you only fund us at then what would be 97% level. So you take the 100% funding, 100% position funding level, and then you subtract 3%, and that's what we end up in our appropriation. So I would have been asking for you to fund me at 100% of authorities. That allows me the flexibility to be able to bring resources as the need arises or the different areas of need. But in double checking with the CAO, it appears that we were actually funded at less than 97%. We're actually funded at 94.6%. So I actually have a 5.6% salary savings rate. So I'm funded at 5.6% less than 100%. So I'm asking you that you appropriate and fund me at 100%. Number 9, that we promptly proceed with pilot programs in coordination with council offices and 2 specific related programs. Study the educational barriers and strategies to more effectively eliminate behaviors that lead to illegal dumping. We obviously have not done enough work in that area. We have to be more academic and understand some of the complexities that lead to such a behavior so that we can come up with the strategies for that. And that we do pilot programs on the installation of surveillance cameras in strategic locations as a tool to more effective enforcement. Now that's in coordination with the council offices. We do know that we got to have more tools to be able to provide the city attorney and LAPD the kind of information that's important for them to have to, pursue more enforcement. Number 10 is that you instruct us to present a proposal to you and the mayor to extend the multifamily bulk item fee to include all multifamily properties, such as condominiums, that are not currently assessed the fee. Now, this is a fee that all apartment owners and tenants pay. It's $1.26 each month, but the assessment does not apply to owner-occupied condominiums. We're asking that you instruct us to present a proposal to you to extend the fee to all condominiums. And then that you ask us to come back and report to the full city council and your committee on the completion and the status of all the activities that I have listed in my report. That's it, not that much.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? Mr. Blumenfield? There's no clapping, please, Mr. Wayne.
Just sort of starting with the last item first, the reason why we don't do condominiums now, is that because they privately contract, or what's the reason for the exclusion?
Councilmember Bloomfield, we did this fee in 2007, and the emphasis then was on the tenant-occupied commercial properties, meaning the apartments, in which the turnover and the need for the service was highest. And so the policy decision then was made to only do it in apartments. it's like doing a new fee, so it was quite involved.
Right.
And so it was no easy task. We went through a whole effort.
I can see how that would be very tricky at the moment to try to do that as opposed to single-family homes. And, I mean, I get that that's a tricky one.
So we would want to start with a proposal. We know that, it is a significant undertaking, but we've done it, and we know we can do it, and we believe we need to do it.
The separate issue, when we start going to the franchise, how will that affect this issue?
Well, very interesting, because it's going to help in so many different ways. One is that by virtue of having a franchise, we will always know who has service and who doesn't. Believe it or not, there are times right now, because a customer can change haulers at any time. Could there be folks who actually may not have trash service? Just because, we don't always know. Right. In a franchise model, there is no question on who is providing the service, who should be providing the service, and then the customer roles, that every parcel and every property will be documented that is subscribed to solid waste service. Number two, if we do our job right, if your sanitation team does its job right as we go through negotiations, we will have a franchise fee revenue that could be used to pay for this program. No more general fund.
So substantial impact on this issue.
If we do our job right, we should have enough for this program.
I'm interested in, you talked about the new tools like the surveillance cameras and even the watershed protection division, police powers, especially given, today you can buy a camera for practically nothing that, is standalone, that'll connect to the internet and show you what's happening somewhere. So it's a lot easier now to put these standalone cameras at a site that's being illegally dumped on for a while. How is that pilot program coming in, and is that something that could make a big difference if it's scaled quickly?
I think the extent by which the system is installed and how much needs to be captured, to what quality, needs to be largely guided by the city attorney and what kind of evidence it needs to show. I know that so far what we have come to see that it's important that those cameras be monitored, meaning the feed. It's got to go to a place where it's being watched. So we have already identified a location, where we have 24/7 staff at our Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant, where we are also going to set up a backup dispatch center. So now we have figured that piece out. Where can we have a 24/7 watch? It's okay, that so far we've identified. On the other piece, whether it has to be too sophisticated versus just, how about just something off the shelf? So we're working with the city attorney and the two council offices to figure that piece out.
So that's not really up and running yet?
No. We have, and I do need help on that there, because we do
probably need to have notice as well, like a sign, a sign saying that you're being recorded somewhere.
Right. I'm sorry, he has most...
Sure.
Good afternoon. Alex Hello, Bureau of Sanitation. We do have a pilot going on right now in CD9 where they have 3 cameras that are placed, but they do record the tape, we take that information. If they notice something, we have to track it down and then work it with the city attorney and LAPD for prosecution. We also have another one in CD14 where they have multiple cameras. I think the council has instructed us to look at multiple cameras and find out which one is the best one for the city to implement it citywide. And what Enrique was referring in his recommendation is that for us to do that pilot, we are looking at several companies and see which one will be the best for the city on a benefit cost analysis. basis, whether we need city staff to be watching it, or is it recorded and then we have to sit down and go through the tape, or is it better to have an outside entity that could pull that information, alert us, alert LAPD, and try to catch somebody in the act? So that's what we really will be like to do quickly in a pilot. Thank you.
I mean, I see it, I've been looking at this for a little while, I mean, through ITA as well, but as a deterrent effect, too. I mean, if you get, it's just like those, the police departments have those signs that say how fast you're going, and they're portable, and cost a little bit of money, but you can get your police department to put it on a particular street that's having a problem. They put it there for 2 weeks. People see it. They see that the time is being recorded, and it brings down the traffic on that area, and then they roll it out and move it somewhere else when that problem's been.
That's exactly what's happening in CD9. That's exactly what, on CD14, they were able to do some prosecution because they caught people in the act. In CD9, they basically have to relocate them because now, although they're disguised, and you can't really tell sometimes, but that's exactly what happened in CD9.
And then I noticed in the report you're talking about the Watershed Protection Division with police powers. I've never noticed that before. What kind of police powers does the Watershed unit have, and is it a mobile unit? How do they use those powers?
We certainly don't want them to have too much. So, no, recently the council granted them higher authority,
right,
but we don't want them to be involved in arresting and doing other things. They may have the authority, but we when things get more complicated, we want LAPD to do that.
Okay, just curious how that's going. And then a key part is getting the Sandstar project going. You're working with ITA on that. Is that how is that going? Are the glitches getting? What's the timetable for that?
We're looking at November 30th to have it up and running. I have my CIO, if you will, Chief Information Officer or Chief Technology Officer, who happens to be an acting Assistant General Manager now. He is the lead on our end, as well as the coordination with ITA and with the Mayor's technology team, and all of the private companies, Oracle, 3DI, ISRI, and they're figuring it all out. Just this morning, they've done enough diagnostics that there's confidence that we can have it completed.
Right. And then 311 is being improved to help with this. Is that a bottleneck in some ways, or where are we with the 311 system and reporting?
The soft launch has occurred, so all our customer agents, both in sanitation and in 311, are using the new system. It is not publicly available yet, but on the inside it's already being used. So it's already become the data repository for all the requests. It's already become the system that sends the information out. And because it is a significant change from what we had as a customer service system, our agents are, as well as 311, but I don't want to speak for ITA, but we're going through the learning curve. That's the beauty of the soft launch and the pre-testing and the pre-launch. So that's where we are right now. It's in that learning curve, Councilman.
It's fun. When I thought of the 311 system, and we've talked about it in the past over the last year or so, it's always been viewed as this is going to be the way people report bulky items and everything else. But one thing that occurred to me during this discussion is that it also may be a useful way to close cases and to keep, you ever use Waze when you're driving? It's a mapping program. But one of the neat things about it is if there's a traffic accident, something pops up as you're driving by and it says, is it still there? And you press yes or no, and a certain number of people have said, yes, the accident is still there. And after a certain number of people hit no, it disappears from your Waze. I could see something like that, which is not currently in the 311 system, but I guess I'm just throwing it out there as an idea because we're talking about it as a way to help keep the equilibrium going, is if if people were able to not only report in the problems, but there was also something automatic that allowed people to report when the bulky items were removed. And neighborhood councils and other people could go through and see what items are open in their area, and they might drive by and say, oh, that's gone, that's picked up. And that might also help with the problem that we cause, frankly, as council members. When we go out doing a good deed, I have a truck, and we go out and we see a bulky item, and if it hasn't been picked up, we just put it in the truck ourselves and get rid of it, which is great, and that's good community service, but it still is as an open item on your list. And if there was that other feedback mechanism, then there might be a box we could check on the 311 system to say, hey, that item's cleared, because we got a lot of complaints and we went out and did it ourselves.
It's a great idea. And in fact, I'll speak probably not as a tech person, and I can call on my AGM who knows more of the intricacies, but I know that my LA 311 is a very robust, very up-to-date kind of a system. And when you unleash the creativity of a tech person, there's all kinds of things that can be done in a robust system. So I think the platform is there, but if you would like, I can ask. Okay.
We don't have to, and I'm sure in my committee we'll spend a lot of time on the 311 system. I just came up and want to put a pin in that and put that out for you guys to work on, and we can follow it up separately then.
Okay.
I think it digresses us a little bit, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have observations, thoughts that I brought into the meeting, and questions, and I'll try to be as efficient as I can with this. One is an observation, and Mr. Fuentes, you noticed it, and I was looking at this, and that is the 5-year graph. There is a glaring statistic that jumps out, and that is CDs 1, 13, and 14 utilize the North Central sanitation yard. CDs 8, 9, and 10, and part of 15 utilize the South Los Angeles yard. And those are the two yards that have the greatest amount of open calls that weren't answered in the 5-year period. And I'm not suggesting that you even respond to this right now, but I think that is something worth paying a whole lot of attention to, because that virtually is the entire 27%. Because West Los Angeles and East and West Valley has little or nothing. So I think that those two sanitation yards kind of pretty much account for all of the open cases over the 5-year period, notwithstanding the last year, which clearly is a vast improvement over your overall numbers. So I just wanted to point that out. I think that's something to pay close attention to as we move forward. I wanted to say when this report, when the news account came out, and then we discussed this in person the next day, so many things were not just weren't jiving with me. And one is the fact that I was going over this just sitting here. In my office, we have 2 contractors that we pay ourselves, and we've done this for over 2 years. So 5 days a week, that's 520 times, 520 separate days. We have my clean team collecting bulky items and litter and all number of things, combined with 24 different occasions where we've done community walks in the last 2 years, where each time we have sanitation trucks circling a several block area picking up items. And then the East Hollywood neighborhood cleanup, which we've done monthly for the last 2 years. Again, sanitation trucks, bulky items. I have a feeling that none of that is reflected in the percentages. I mean, zero.
Right.
To Mr. Blumenfield's point, the trucks that we have going around all the time, we just pick things up. So I think that there is a real inequity in the accuracy of these graphs. So I think that's a factor. So, which brings me to your item number 9 on your recommendations in relation to pilot programs. I think they're sort of connected. Better coordination. with what we're doing, my clean teams, I think that we need to devise, there are 15 different council districts doing 15 different things, probably on their own way that serves their district to the best ability. So we need to figure out how to coordinate every single address that we attend to, which is several hundred per year.
Yes.
That should reflect, and you should be able to cross-reference in the calls that you've received. Along with that, and that doesn't even include, in your pilot program category, that doesn't even include that coordination that I think we need to improve upon. But on the other recommendations you have, the surveillance, strategies, educational, et cetera, will there also be a budget request for that in the upcoming fiscal budget? In other words, have you anticipated the costs or potential costs for that?
I'm so glad that you elaborated on that very gap of not capturing all of the work and reflecting it as it should be. I believe that as I quickly think about where we can fit that in, I have a recommendation where we put in for a performance metrics review group. Perhaps we can include this very coordination of having a system that has citywide reach by which conveniently community groups and council offices coordinating all of these cleanups can easily enter their information.
Like my clean team manager who goes out with the crews 5 days a week, if he had the capability of just sending in the address to the system,
yes,
so that it cross-references it automatically, that would take seconds to do.
Yes, without even any staff. Yes, so absolutely. Let us look at that then.
All right, so that's something. Let's see. Bear with me for just a second, sorry. I'm actually trying to reduce the number of questions I wanted to ask. Okay. Back to the exclusive franchise waste haul agreement. In terms of, I have over 80% renters in the 13th district. We have the most densely populated neighborhoods in the city, in the East Hollywood, Temple, Bottery area. And so that accounts for a lot of, I think, bulky items when tenants move. Sometimes a whole entire apartment is just emptied out into the curb. It happens a lot. And I know this is not just my district, but I think the fact that we have over 80% renters is very relevant to the incidence of unanswered calls. Will these franchise waste haulers have any responsibility for these big apartment complexes when that sort of incident occurs, where a whole entire apartment, which sometimes it has everything. It has a television plus a couch plus a recycle. So it compounds the number of, the type of response the city might be responsible for. Might our waste haulers who have the contracts take some responsibility in addressing that along with city sanitation?
Great point. I think, as we're looking at this different service levels with the private haulers, a landlord or a property owner would subscribe to a certain service level. If it's a smaller dumpster with 3 cubic yard, is it a 5 cubic yard? For the big items, of course, for that you need a roll-off box, right? So let us see how we bring that discussion into our negotiations so that the property provides a way in which things that are larger can be put in a way that it doesn't end up costing the tenant, or that's why we believe the universality and accessibility of the service should be directly with the city, so that no one has to worry about whether they're going to have to pay the landlord more or the hauler more, because our service is unlimited. No matter how many times a year matter how many items.
But if there's a way to share that burden because of an exclusive contract, then maybe
We
that's
will.
something to look at.
We will look at that.
And another question, do these open cases, do they stay open indefinitely? You said you're going to close them, so it's unbelievable to me that something that was called in 4 years ago in my community is still open because I live there and call things in every day myself. So I'm just curious how...
Well, Councilman, because we have not gone through somewhat of an official write-off process, like in small debt, we departments have a write-off process by which we can say, let's just write this off, this are not ever going to happen or whatever. We have not gone through that right now, and I'm not suggesting that we do it now. Let us instead do an actual field check.
Okay.
And that way there is no question as to whether anything is out there.
And one thing I'd like you to report back to my team specifically is the number of open service requests as per the CSI strike team, and just kind of get a handle on that exact number. Maybe it's on the graph here already. I'll take a closer look.
Yes, we will.
But that would be helpful to understand. And if we do indeed fund a third strike team, does that mean it'll add a third additional capability?
Yes.
Okay, just I wanted to make sure. All right. Lastly, I would love for you to report back to this committee, or suggest that the chair ask you that, to just take a look at that inequity that I mentioned in terms of the sanitation yards, and explain that to the best of your ability. This is no complaint at all to your professionals at North Central Sanitation. My team loves working with everyone there and always has. But the number, I just can't figure out that number. It's just not making sense to me. All right, and lastly, this whole controversy blew up because of a media report. And so I want to just say that I think it's really important that with a regular reporting structure, I think that may be more often than, I don't know if we're suggesting every bi-monthly or quarterly, with the success rate of all calls, so that something like this doesn't blow up again after some investigative reporting that many of us aren't aware of. And that's more of a suggestion than anything else. Okay, and then the other questions have been answered already, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Cedillo?
Speaking of the media reports, the headline for August 14th was "Many Poor Areas of LA Get Less Trash Service, Analysis Shows." Is that a true statement? Why or why not?
Councilmember Cedillo, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
The headlines for the LA Times on August 14th, 2015 stated, "Many poor areas of LA get less trash service, analysis shows." I'm asking you if that's a true statement or not. Why it is or isn't.
It is not a true statement in this recent time. If you were to look at the data from the 2010, 2011, where those open requests were left open, that could be a perceived lesser level of service. Clearly not the case now.
Let me ask you this. You had talked about authority to hire. Do you have any vacancies in your organization today?
We do.
How many?
Well, for sure we have to maintain our salary savings, which is now I've learned in this solid waste program, it's 5.6% salary savings, so we have at least 75 vacancies.
So you you believe that you have to maintain a 5% salary savings in your budget? So you're less than zero budget in terms of your operations?
We have to, because we are not funded. That's the level we're funded. We're funded at 95.4%.
So you're not fully funded?
No, not to 100%. I'm
So
funded at 95.6%.
Okay, so then your 95.6% is your 100%. That's how much?
Yes.
That's your income,
Yes.
right? And within that, do you have vacancies?
Within that, to get an actual updated as of this week, my CFO, if I may.
Good afternoon, Lisa Mowry, Chief Financial Officer. Yes, even within, if we set aside the vacancy rate required for salary savings, we do have some vacancies within that lesser amount that we are currently trying to fill.
Okay, do you know how many?
I don't know specific for the solids program. Overall, we do have more than 400 for both solids and wastewater and watershed.
Overall, that includes the salary savings.
Right. And you're the general manager of the organization, correct?
Yes.
So who's telling you not to fill or make an organizational decision, given this crisis, at least of perception, not to fill those positions or to create a strike team, an additional strike team, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, given the perception at least, fill those positions so that we can be more responsive to the residents of the city of Los Angeles?
Well, Councilman, believe me, I was more than tempted to act on that presumed authority.
Mhm.
But I know that fiscal responsibility is just as important. So it was clear and important for me to know whether the city council had in fact given me the authority to expend money for this very purpose from the CSI budget, and it wasn't clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
If that is clear with the city council, we'll do that tomorrow.
Let me suggest to you that, at least from my position, I respect you as a general manager, and I expect you to make those types of decisions without coming back to us. I think the fact that, at least for my office, we put $1 million aside and put this motion in on the first day that we came to council. I think the next budget that you indicated, we gave you $5 million. The next one is $9 million. I think that's indicative of the council's position, that cleaning up the streets of Los Angeles is of our highest priority. And I am not asking you to come back for permission to do your job. I respect you as the general manager of this incredible department and expect you to take the initiative to make those executive decisions. I assure you, no one will be upset if you do.
Not even the CAO?
Not even the CAO.
All right.
I assure you.
Okay.
I assure you the CAO will not be upset. People get upset when the trash isn't picked up. They get less upset if you spend your money.
Thank you, Councilman.
And so I'm just speaking for myself, but I don't think anybody wants you to come back to make that decision. Let's talk about the culture of the city and cleaning it up. So I want you to know, like my colleagues here, this has been a high priority. We do a cleanup every other week. We talk about this every Monday at 4 o'clock. This is our highest priority. This is the main body of what we do in our office. But one of the challenges for us is informing the public about what we do and what we're doing. We have, for example, a program that we instituted with you, a pilot program where people can just call in and have the stuff picked up at their homes. that means that is not on the streets, creating that visibility blight that offends people. Can you tell me two things? One, what your pickup has been in the in-home pickup, one, and two, what type of marketing do you have planned to make people aware of this? Billboard purchases, I've worked with your team reading books at schools, but, what are you guys planning in terms of billboards and commercials and communications and notices in people's bills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, Councilman, one of the recommendations is that we spend the time to look at the deeper aspects of illegal dumping and the behaviors so that the education strategies can be tailored in line with those findings that we come up with. But, clearly, and thank you for stretching our sense of creativity on our service and business model, as Councilmember Fuentes, Chair Fuentes was doing with us earlier. Why couldn't you do it this other way? You did that on the in-home service, because never had we imagined that we could do that, as crazy as that sounds. Why? Because we had been bound by this issue of the moment we enter a private property where the liability. But you released us from that fear. It's still an issue, but not to the point that it should be an impediment to move in that direction. Likewise, this relook at our service model, it's important. The education aspect of it, we will do a heck of a lot. We have done the truck signs, we've done the leaflets, we've done the brochures. But I do believe that we have to spend the time to look at this from the ground up, beginning with how the behaviors start, and then tackle it and design the strategy accordingly.
Just the day's late, let me ask you, how are we going to know? You asked us, and the first one, instruct you to achieve and maintain a daily mass balance of bulk item service requests. My office, we communicate with you frequently. Sometimes I think my staff works in your office. How are we going to know that this is happening?
Well,
I was assuming that it was happening. Then I read a report that says it's not happening. You tell me it is happening. How are we going to know that this is happening?
Well, it touches also on the point that Councilmember O'Farrell made. How do we communicate that to you? Certainly the mayor's instructions to me is that all of this information needs to be on the open data and on the portals. And we will do that. But we also can send you, and will send you, reports that you and your staff can see in a way that is convenient and easily accessible. And we can do that, and we'll do that. Whether it's daily, whether it's weekly, we'll talk with your staff and yourselves, or we place them in some kind of web portal that you can access at any time.
Can you go back to tell me again what your plans were for marketing of your service?
I said that, the more permanent strategy, Councilman, I want us to spend the time to do this study that will look at behaviors and how we can more effectively change behaviors, and then tailor the education pieces according to the findings from that study. However, the more common ways of communicating, the brochure, so that at every location we leave something behind, canvas, neighborhoods, through either our apartment bulky item service, all of our outlets, brochures, the social media. We have a marketing manager in sanitation that, has been with us for just over a year. She's great. She's got a lot of ideas, and we're going to put a whole marketing strategy based on her expertise. But know that all of the, the more conventional types we're doing now, we're going to do more of them.
I'd like to see the marketing plan, if she's been with you for a year, what her proposals are.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. So I was actually struck by something, the very first question, Mr. Cedillo, that you asked, where you asked Mr. Saldivar if he believed that the Los Angeles Times portrayal of the inequities in this service are real or not. And you answered that today they're not real, maybe not so much before. I believe that that everybody that's working for you or street services or the governance of all of these agencies have never intended to be unequal in their approach to service delivery. But I do think we owe them an apology, the residents of the city of Los Angeles, because we have failed to account for how it is that this service delivery should be done. The very nature of our need to have CSIs in place, this graph here where you show us in CD1 and CD9 that we have to focus extra effort, I think underscores the point that we're not doing a good job. And so whether it's current or former councils, current or former mayors, current sanitation or previously the Bureau of Street Services, whether it's anecdotal or not, when you drive through this city, there is not a uniform approach. And I think that we have a plan going forward, and I'm heartened by the fact that there is an approach, there's metrics, there is new logic that's being instituted to remedy the situation in the city. But I don't think there's any question that we owe the residents of Los Angeles an apology. And so I don't know where that comes from. But I, for one, don't have a choice but to believe that we're going to have to do things differently. So I've got a couple of questions that I think are not, really as readily available in the presentation that you made, but I think are somewhat inside of the report that you gave us. I think part of our challenge here to do this job in a more equitable fashion and to do the job well is that we're going to have to really rethink how it is that we fund this service delivery. You have in your report on page 4 a couple of different examples on how it is that we pay for certain types of pickup. We have the household residential waste collection program. We have the single-family residential bulky item collection. We have the multifamily bulky item collection. We are going to have, in short order, a private waste haulers and commercial franchise oversight bucket of money. There's CSI, that's fairly new, and then we have the CSI illegal dumping abandoned waste bulky items. So I think it begs the question, if you find a piece of trash in the street, irrespective of its source or how it's to be disposed of, how do we know who pays for it? And I think that's been largely what is contributing to the problem here. So if it's in a residential neighborhood, then presumably you fund it through your single-family residential bulky item collection bucket. If it's not, it's a tweener between multifamily and single-family residential, then I think it stays there until we figure out who and how we pay for it. Help me understand if I'm misunderstanding this, because I think that prior to CSI, my belief is that there was not a city-funded program to deal with what I just call bulky items in the street, not attributed to that initiated by the resident, but just in the street. I don't know the genesis of the bulky item, but it seems to me that prior to CSI, we didn't fund bulky item collection. Is that an accurate or inaccurate belief that I have?
Did not fund illegally dump bulky items.
Illegally dump bulky items?
Yes. Did not.
We did not fund it.
Mm-mm.
So CSI is the real first time that we have put effectively our money where our mouth is to go after bulky items that are dumped illegally.
Correct.
So prior to all of that, the Bureau of Street Services, they did it out of what bucket of funding? I mean, how is it that they would?
General fund.
General fund. And so that was a decision that presumably was made by councils and mayors to say that we're going to spend this much in Bureau of Street Services, and they would then figure out how much based on need, presumably, on what to collect and how to collect it.
Correct.
So to me, there's no doubt why there's such a big backlog, because we have not funded illegal bulky items. And now, it's not a criticism to what you all are doing. I want to recognize the fact that there are metrics now, there are systems in place, there is, I think, a concerted effort on how to deal with this. But I think, colleagues, it speaks to the need for us to have to be able to fund this and make it a priority. And so the last couple of years, good for us newbies, we've done that. Bad for us in that prior councils and prior administrations haven't really done that. We had a different scheme on how we did that. But I think what to me is really interesting is that it took a periodical to inform us that there's a problem with how we do this. We have a lot of blame to share here. The Public Works Commission presumably oversaw the Street Services Bureau and sanitation. We share the governance with sanitation with them. What mechanisms are there in place today to inform our Bureau of Public Works Commission, Board of Public Works Commission, how it is that we're doing? I think going forward, they're going to get very, very good reporting, but is there something in place that says a check-in with them? It only gets to us when there's a problem. And I'm just wondering, going forward, is there something built in that will make it so that they know in real time what's happening with these efforts, as well as us, because now we're going to have report backs and that sort of thing.
And Mr. Chair, just let me add, I believe, though, that the first thing we did was pony up the first $1 million, which was focused and may have been the genesis of us going after the illegal dumping. But I also think in the motion that we wrote on the Keep It Clean pilot, I think we also asked for what you're asking for, and that was for fees from the multifamily properties.
Yes, the condominiums.
Right. Well, why hasn't that happened? In his answer, why hasn't that not happened yet?
We had not done the complete analysis, have not done that complete analysis, Councilman, with regards to, one, knowing the entire universe of condominiums, having the exact more recent data. 5 years ago, there were, this is just numbers that I have heard about, 60,000 or 50,000 residential units in downtown. Now I hear the numbers up to 100,000. So we need to make sure that we have updated all of our information on the universe, which is why we're asking that we do a proposal to you that will speak to the grasp of the information to begin with. So if you were to ask me right now, what is the number of condominiums that could be paying this fee, I wouldn't have that number.
So that was Mr. Cedillo's question. My question was, how do we ensure from a governance perspective, is there a way today that the commission, the council, aside from budget, knows how it is that we're doing in this area and anything else that your department oversees? Because it took, again, a newspaper to say, hey, there's a problem, and now we're all reacting to it.
Well, we have reporting responsibility to the commission. We have a reporting responsibility to you, the commission, we owe them every piece of information that they need to have. We owe that to them. So the same report that we are going to make available on the more frequent diagnostics of everything that we're doing, we got to make sure that we provide that to them as well.
Okay. I think there's a lot here that we need to continue to cook. And so, colleagues, what I want to do is let's go ahead and take public comment here, if that's okay. And there are a couple of cards here. Thank you, Mr. Saldivar. If you would just scooch on over, this way we can see if we can get 4 folks up at a time. Let's go ahead and have Wayne, Mimi Soto, Herman, and Dennis Gleason, please. Actually, Mr. Gleason, why don't you come on up first? You're representing Council District 15. My apologies. Take as much time as you need on behalf of Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, honorable members. First of all, I apologize for not wearing a tie. No disrespect intended. First thing I'd like to say, the CAO wrote a very great report. They brought on board a Fuse Corps fellow who spent an entire year just researching this problem. If you haven't read it, it's really good. Councilman Cedillo was integral in getting him brought on board. That's Council File 14-1499. I encourage you to read page 19 as it relates to funding. I speak as a representative of Councilman Buscaino and also as a resident of the City of Los Angeles. I recently moved from a condominium to a single-family house, and a lot of these issues that are coming up today I've experienced personally. First one I'd like to bring up, the MyLA 311 app is an incredible tool, but every time I pull that out and I have to decide between bulky item and illegal dumping, I don't know what to do. One of them describes an object and one of them describes a crime. And that's very difficult, I think, for residents to figure out what they need to select in that situation. And I'd like to reiterate that illegal dumping is a crime. It's punishable by a $1,000 fine or up to 6 months in jail. And if the quantity of items that are dumped is large enough, it rises to the level of a felony. So Councilman Buscaino believes this problem needs to be addressed comprehensively. And if we're simply just funding pickups from sanitation, we're going to be treading water. We're just going to be picking up the trash that other people are illegally dumping, and we need to go after those people that are illegally dumping on our streets, our sidewalks, and our alleys. Some of the things we've been looking at to address this, and some of these are in the CAO's report, are a dedicated city attorney investigator. Now, this is not an attorney themselves. This would be someone who would go around, they'd talk to private businesses, get surveillance video from private businesses, and help those neighborhood prosecutors file these illegal dumping cases. The other thing is surveillance cameras. It's incredibly hard to dedicate the resources to do a stakeout or something along those lines because it takes a lot of time. A lot of the districts, specifically along the 110 corridor or anywhere along a freeway where someone can get on and get off really quickly, I think is where you see a lot of these problems. Surveillance cameras are a very cost-effective tool at identifying the perpetrators. A lot of these cameras now, they have license plate reader technology, they have motion sensors, they've got night vision. A lot of them can, in real time, transmit high definition video. There's some great technology out there that we should be using a lot more. The other issue, we need more cooperation among our residents. An idea that was brought to us by the City Attorney's Office is partnering with Crime Stoppers, who have a privately funded tip and reward program. Now, the value of working with Crime Stoppers in a lot of communities, especially those with a high proportion of undocumented immigrants, they're often hesitant to report these crimes, and they're fearful of retaliation, and they're fearful if they put their name out there that that's going to be used against them, and that'll be used to identify them for deportation. The value of Crime Stoppers, it is completely anonymous, it's privately funded, and if you qualify for a reward, what they do is they send you a code to your phone. If you text it in the tip, you can go to Nick's check cashing and they will give you your reward. It's a great resource and we should expand that more. As for education, now this is a big thing. I think it goes hand in hand with the enforcement piece. You have to let people know how they can legally dispose of trash. Now I mentioned before, I just moved into a single family house. We had a bunch of old carpets, pulled up the carpets, the tack strips, the carpet pads, threw those in the garage. I got a whole bunch of green waste in there. I've got paints and solvents and e-waste and cardboard. I've got a garage full of trash, and I don't know what to do with it. And if I don't know what to do with it, and I work for a city council member, any member of the public is going to have trouble identifying what to do with it as well. We need to do a better job of education. I think I remembered seeing a photo of Councilman Cedillo reading to some school children. It does start in the schools because the children can educate their parents. The other thing we need to be cognizant of is making sure we provide information in the language of the population that we are trying to reach. Another great resource is our neighborhood councils. I participated kind of as a research project in a neighborhood council sponsored cleanup in my own neighborhood. I probably submitted about 10 different service requests through my 311 app, and finally at the end of it, some of my fellow neighborhood council volunteers came up to me and they asked what I was doing, and I had to explain to them, we have this great app. All you do is you take a picture, you submit your location. It's a great tool, but it's not a good tool if no one knows about it. So we need to do a better job of letting people know that they have this great tool, and that's a great way neighborhood councils can be involved. Another thing is our Office of Community Beautification. I just found this out recently. We have a warehouse that's filled with shovels, trash bags, all sorts of tools that our Office of Community Beautification through the Board of Public Works will loan out to our neighborhood councils. But again, they have to know about that and they have to know to ask for it. We talked about funding, certainly expanding the use of the multifamily bulky item fund and the solid waste resources revenue fund. Mr. Chair, you spoke about that. Absolutely. From a ratepayer's perspective, I've asked my own neighbors, do you have an objection to using your trash fee for this purpose? They don't recognize those differences. All they see is the trash on the street, and they want the trash gone. And it's difficult to know, too. Like, what's the difference between a sofa on the street? Is that illegal dumping? What makes that illegal dumping, it depends on who put it there and whether or not they reported it to 311. The other issue that it may make sense to look at is educating people about when to put those items out on the street. I see it every day. I'll go by, there'll be a sofa there. I'll go by the next day, there'll be a couple chairs there. I'll go by the next day, there'll be a microwave. It really is true that blight attracts other blight. In regards to the exclusive franchise for waste hauling, I do want to clarify something that our Bureau Director said. He said that the revenue that comes in from the franchise fee could be used for illegal dumping pickups, and then the general fund wouldn't have to pay. But I would like to reiterate, any franchise fee revenue is general fund revenue. So it's essentially the same thing. An item I would want to call your attention to, the RFP for the waste hauling franchise agreements did not include a provision that the haulers have to pick up illegal dumping and bulky item from the commercial corridors. We believe that was a missed opportunity. That's something other smaller cities do require, like West Hollywood, where I lived in 2004 when they went through their exclusive franchise RFP. Finally, I think that there's a great partnership that could be reached through the Apartment Association and LA and Orange County building trades. We need to start educating building owners about when they have tenants moving in and out, making sure that they're actively involved in getting rid of those bulky items that, if you don't have a truck and you don't plan on taking a bed or sofa with you, what are you going to do? You're going to leave it on the street because you have no other choice. Those are things that we really need to address, and there's some opportunities there. Finally, there's an idea. I don't want to go into too much detail. It actually came from our city attorney's office in the last Clean Streets Working Group meeting that we had, and that is, as a punitive measure, we need to look at ways where contractors who have construction debris and look at a quick way of getting rid of it, just jump off the 110 freeway, find an alley, dump it, and go. We need to make sure that there are penalties that are so severe that they'll think twice about doing that, and somehow restricting their ability to do business in the city of Los Angeles if they dump on LA. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate the extra time you gave me.
Great, thank you. Let's go ahead and take Wayne, Mimi Soto, Herman, and Simboa Wright. Come on up.
Mr. Chair.
If you could approach the microphone, please.
Yes. I would like to actually come up with other SEIU members when their cards come up. Is that okay?
No,
I'll let them go first.
we're giving everybody 1 minute, so you've got 1 minute to speak, please.
Okay, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. That's all right.
If I do something different for you, I got to do something different for them.
Yeah, well, you
Well, no.
for the night before.
No, you can do
The
it.
gentleman was with Councilmember Buscaino's office. He's an official representative of the city of Los Angeles, so thank you.
Well, I'm an official representative of SEIU 721 who represents 20,000 workers.
Let's go ahead and start our time then. Go ahead, Ms. Soto.
Okay, so what I want to say is I want to address the recent newspaper articles referring to the illegal dumping. I'm actually shocked that you guys are actually asking sanitation, for the last 5 or 10 years of where in terms of the dumping, because the department who was actually in charge of it was street services, and in 2012 it was defunded by city council. So you all shouldn't be shocked that it wasn't happening, okay? But what I do want to say is during our joint labor management that we have had, we brought it up a lot of times to Enrique Salvador that our members were working out of classification because they were cleaning up that illegal dumping. We didn't think it didn't make sense to us because sanitation was not getting funded for that. Mr. Salvador and Mr. Halubit made it very clear that residents don't know the difference between the funding, and so what their main concern was that the residents get what they expected, which was clean streets and clean alleyways. So there was nothing there. I just want to say this really quickly. We represent a lot of different cities, as you know. During the downturn in the economics, the city of LA was not any different than any other city. Services were cut everywhere. So you should not be afraid to let residents know we just didn't have the money.
Thank you very
but
much.
Going forward...
Soto, your time is over. Thank you very
I understand.
much.
But going forward, I can think of no other department that is better suited than sanitation to be able to take the reign and do a really good job. Thank you very much. And what I do want to say, Mr. Fuentes, is it seems like you don't want to hear from the public and you're very arrogant. So arrogant.
All right.
Herman?
Well, the situation here is that at this point, Enrique did nothing wrong. All of you did something wrong. You didn't provide for the workers. And those workers are the sanitation workers, our brothers that pick up the trash on a daily basis, that you refuse to give them raises and give them the calm time they need to continue and finish their jobs. You little chipmunk are part of the problem. Although you're new, you pick up the problems that someone left behind, like Antonio Viragosa, who has no business here anymore. So get on the ball. Stop putting the blame on sanitation. It's your dumbass faults. Don't blame Enrique. And the bottom line is this, giving us 1 fucking minute for 2 items, go screw yourself. That's right, screw yourself. The way you screw a knob into a door, knobhead. That's right. Because it's unfair, unconstitutional to not allow us to speak for 2 fucking minutes, you dumbass. And that's how pissed off it makes us. But I like the hour.
Yes, and we recorded the violence you made against the SIU worker who are campaign donors. And they need to fire you fuckers. And that's why they know now. Thank you, LA Times. Thank you, Austin Bootner, for taking over that miserable fucking paper, changing the editorial board, and start reporting local news. The Daily News is doing it too. Because I've been coming here, I have to wear a Klan hood. But now finally they see the hood and they go, why? Because this city's ran by hoods. You're ran by racist fucking hoods. CD9 has never had a representative. Jan Perry was stupid. Curran Price is honest, but he's weak and scared. So those people don't have a representative. I have to represent CD9. I'm representing CD9 today because nobody else does. Clean the shit up in CD9. Get the trucks out there tomorrow morning. Kevin James will be there Friday at the Board of Public Works. Get the trucks out there now.
Simboa Wright, Andy Morales, Richard Guzman, and Rosa Max. Are they here?
I'm Rosa Max.
Please have a seat. Thank you. Your time's going, ma'am, so it's
Oh,
time for you to speak. No, you can sit and speak.
Dear neighbors, and I want to read a letter that I wrote to the neighbors and community. Dear neighbors and community, my name is Rosa Max. I'm born and raised in both city and rural life around Amsterdam and Sevilla, Spain. Almost a decade ago, I moved to Silver Lake, and I decided to settle here in LA. In 2008, I became an American citizen. Today, I'm a single mother, earning her living as a construction service expediter and a land use specialist. This career gives me a chance to learn. I spent plenty time at city planning counters, building and safety with developers, architects, engineers, contractors, crew, and all sorts of community members, anti and pro progress. I see much potential and opportunity for the city of Los Angeles and its entire community to join forces and share resources.
Thank you very much.
Am I allowed to?
No, you only have 1 minute, I'm sorry. Rudy Guevara, Jesse Valdez, and Dennis Enos.
Can I make the point how it touches this?
You can submit something to the clerk if you like, but there's no more that you can testify. All righty, so Dennis Enos, Jesse Valdez, Rudy Guevara. Okay, colleagues, they are not here. That concludes public comment on this item. I'm going to ask that we continue this item and item number 2 and number 3 and instruct the CAO to report back with the viability of the financial impact of the Bureau of Sanitation's recommendations numbers 5 through 8.
Mr. Chair, we also discussed, and I don't know if this is included in that, but given the urgency, I want to make sure that the instructions are clear to the department that they should go forward and hire a strike team. We heard there were 400 vacancies. He was not clear that there was a desire or authority to do so. I think we should make that clear and ask him to move forward with that action.
And so the CAO typically, Mr. Cedillo, when it comes to position authority, whether they've got it or not, our reports are typically joined with the CAO report, and we don't have one here. And so my sense is that there needs to be some clarification. I would ask the CAO to move quickly, and at the next meeting, hopefully give us a sense for whether they can proceed or not. But with due respect to the general manager, there's a reason why there's a budget and a CAO, and to make sure that they've got the authority. So I don't know that they do. Love Mr. Saldivar, but we've got to have the CAO give us instructions.
So how can we do that as prompt as possible?
We'll ask the CAO to come back and report on this item in number 3 with a report back on the viability and financial impact on the Bureau's recommendations number 5 through 8. The CAO's in the room, and he gets the sense that we want to move quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Seeing no objection, that shall be the order. That leaves us with general public comment, colleagues. Herman, Mimi Soto, and Wayne. Wayne? Herman?
So ultimately and unacceptably, back to the basics. Back to the basics for sanitation. Based on greed, reduction on services, dilemmas to clean our neighborhoods, such as in Council District 9, what about in Boyle Heights? And if it wasn't for Gilbert Cedillo to kick ass in CD1, CD1 would look like your house. Shit. All shit. All shit. All shit. That's right, Mr. Fuentes, because we don't like living like this. We do not. And I demand you get those trucks rolling this week and clean up the mess in CD9 and help Curran Price. Because I'll go out there Friday and I'll pick up the goddamn trash with you guys to prove a point that I'm not afraid to pick up the shit. All the shit that you haven't picked up in all these years to create blight, eyesores in our community, bulky items, and then blame it on the homeless. Stop putting the poor excuse on homeless people, because one day I hope to see you homeless, or even better, right next to me.
Not during the meeting. I cannot, but I will later.
Brian Barajas, Rosa Max. Go ahead, Wayne.
Yes. Speaking for the children, you have to teach the children that the city of Los Angeles is a plantation. It's made up of 15 plantations and 15 slave owners that own slaves. Everybody's a slave in the LA city. Herb Wesson's the largest slave owner in the West Coast. Somebody's crying in the back. Police officers took Mr. Herman outside today and wouldn't let him come back in. But I got ghetto and I said, brother, get the fuck back in City Hall and get going. And we stayed here all day and we listened to people that don't know how to pick up garbage. It's very simple. You put on gloves, you put on a helmet, and you pick up the fucking trash. It's been done for 8,000 fucking years. Just pick it up.
Barajas?
Ms. Max.
Mr. Barajas.
Oh, Mr. Ross? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Mr. Barajas.
Yeah, all right. So on our website, LaRouchePack.com, we have a paradigm show called Fission, Fusion, and Collapse. In other words, our organization is spearheading the way you actually come out of a crisis. Obviously, you're dealing with a lot of activities in order for you to get to where you want to go. But the issue here is how the hell do you bring the society and also a government which is in total free fall. And so our mission, and I will be delivering literally, this is our program. How do you do a 100-day like FDR did to recover what needs to be recovered worldwide? So as soon as I can, or as soon as we come out with it, I'll turn it in.
Ms. Max.
Much of my time.
Ms. Max, if you could sit down so you can speak into.
If I sit down and I am not a public speaker, and then it will
Okay, well then project so we can get it on the microphone.
I see a lot of opportunities for community and city departments to join forces and share resources. Much of my time I spend on my biggest hobby is to find a way to create a more sustainable future for the environment on this planet. I became a beekeeper, started raising chickens in my backyard, and now, at the encouragement of our mayor, Eric Garcetti, I have become a city shepherd. Let me explain. Since a young girl, I'm studying sustainability methods and recycling solutions, and now I feel I need to make a difference and help my 2 toddlers growing up in a cleaner and healthier world. In 2011, the Green Committee and Silver Lake Neighborhood Council, then headed by my neighbor, Councilman Eric Garcetti, encouraged me to gather a flock of miniature baby doll Southdown sheep to be used for a city weed abatement initiative.
Thank you very much. All right, that concludes Energy and Environment. Thank you.